Hey guys, and welcome to another devlog video. Another week, another name change. Okay, I actually got the domain name this time, so hopefully it's the last time. Now, for the past 2 weeks, I've mostly been doing backend work and preparation for what's to come. So I have to warn you, this one's going to be quite a technical one, because even though I got a lot of work done, I don't really have a lot of visual footage to show for it. So the first thing I worked on this week was implementing a network backend for the engine, because it actually didn't have one yet. This is basically a framework for all the netcode, how packets are handled and stuff like that. What's cool about the implementation is that it's completely protocol or medium independent. On the server side, there's basically a class called Netserver that acts as, well, a server. It notifies you when a new user session is created, when we receive a packet from a user and so on. But the Netserver itself actually does not contain any networking logic at all. For that, you have to dynamically add backends to the Netserver. For now, I only have two backends, a TCP server backend and a local backend. The TCP one, as its name suggests, allows the Netserver to communicate through TCP, which allows for things like LAN games and connecting via IP. The local backend is basically just a dummy backend that lets the game connect to its own internal server as if it were a remote player. More on that later. The cool thing is that I can very easily add new backends to this, and you can add as many as you want to a single server. In the future, when we want to add Steam, for example, as a backend, this will allow you to actually play both with Steam friends and players locally connected via LAN or directly via IP in the same game. I mean, people could even connect via IP over avian carriers if you implemented a backend for it. Yes, that's a thing apparently. So then on the client side, a similar thing happens, but it's a bit simpler. There's a net client class, which is just an abstract interface, and then there's multiple implementations of that: net client TCP, net client local, net client Steam, etc. So the reason why I did this networking prep was because I wanted to get the multiplayer support in very early on. It's much harder to turn a single player game into a multiplayer one later, rather than just taking multiplayer into account from the get-go. It saves you a lot of refactoring and rewriting code. So that's why I'm designing this game with a client-server architecture in mind at all times. Basically, the server is going to decide all the gameplay actions, what monsters are running around and stuff like that, and the client just displays everything. And this applies to single player as well. This way we don't need to write multiple versions of all the code, and it also allows you to, for example, turn a single player game into a multiplayer one with just the push of a button, since the internal server is always running. So in order to test all this stuff, I added in a temporary placeholder menu that allows you to create worlds, specify a seed, load existing worlds, and either host a game or join a game via IP address. I also had a bit of fun experimenting with the UI system that I wrote a good while ago, since I hadn't really tested it out in practice yet. It supports sort of CSS-style animations like border radius and animated transitions and stuff like that. It's actually pretty cool, and you can actually make decent looking UIs with it rather quickly. Okay, so with all of that stuff in place, I could finally start implementing some of the game systems. So after doing the trivial stuff like hosting and joining and all that, I started working on world synchronization. This is basically the system where the host and the client figure out which parts of the world data the client doesn't have yet and which parts it does have but need to be updated because they differ from the version that the host has. So I won't be explaining the whole system in detail because it's quite complicated, but just know that it involves a lot of hashes, and no, not that kind. So finally, in between doing the backend stuff, I've been trying to get back into some 3D modeling. I've done some modeling before, and I actually took a 3D modeling class once, but it's been quite a long time since then, so I've been trying to get back into it on the side. Though I probably should have started with something easier than a human head. So that's it for this video. Next week I'm on holiday, so there won't be a video then. After that, I'm gonna work on implementing physics, and I'll try to have it like a character running around so we can actually do something in the world. So stay tuned for that. Oh yeah, subscribe and all that stuff. I'm really desperate, I need it. Okay, thanks, bye.